We're back here inside Unreal, and we're going to have a look at how to actually set up a master sequence. So if you're not there already, in your content browser or using Control Space to open your content drawer, find the cinematics folder, either over here on the right or over here on the left, and drop down to reveal sequences. Open that one up, and you should see this. So we've got our shot one we created before, and we've got our example one that came with the project. So we're going to make a master sequence, and as I explained in the last lesson, a master sequence is actually just a level sequence. It's just treated a bit differently by us. I'm going to right click and type level. Now there's a bug in Unreal right now where as you start typing it selects the first letter, but even still it's deleted the first letter, but it can still pretty easily find level sequence. And if you don't want to use the search, remember we can always go animation, level sequence. I'm going to call this master. You could call it edit, main, whatever you want to call it, but just make sure you keep your naming consistent so that you always know which one is the master sequence. So now that I've created it, I'm going to open it by double clicking, and we're presented with a normal blank sequence. Over on the left, I'm going to click the plus track, go down to where it says shot track right here, and left click here. And now that we've added it, you see here it says shots. We can go over to the plus shot and we can add our first shot in. So I'd like to add shot one. So I click the plus, and down here I can see every sequence that's in my project. Now you'll probably just have example, master, and shot 01. So I'm going to hit shot 01. You can see it's filled out a clip inside the sequence and added thumbnails. Now it looks a lot like the camera cuts track, right? But if we go over here and we double click on shot 1, we can dive into it. So now we're inside shot 1, where we had our animation tracks applied and our camera. And to confirm this, we could go over here and preview through the camera in the camera cuts track. Yep, that looks like our shot 1. So you'll notice on the right over here, we have shot 1, but we also have master. So what's happened here is because shot 1 has been added as a shot inside master, we now have this breadcrumb structure where we can follow these along back to the master sequence. So I'm going to click there on master and I'm back into the master sequence. And if I ever want to go back, I just double click here. So now I'm going to come back to the master, and you'll notice that even though I'm back up in the master, I'm still previewing through the camera because this camera icon is still enabled. So even though these are different tracks, the shot track and the camera track, if I left click here and then go down into my shot, the camera cuts track will also be enabled. And you can always think of this as viewing the edit, whether you're clicking it here or you're clicking it on the shots track. It's always to just view the edit, but not to change the shot. Okay, now I want to add my other shot. So I'm going to go back to where we said plus shot before and click that. And then it's right here. So I'm going to click like that. Now it's added it where my playhead is, just like our animation tracks were added before. But this is a bit odd because how is Sequencer supposed to preview both these shots when they're doing different things? So what it does is Sequencer chooses the track with the highest priority. And in this case, that's shot 1. So if I wanted to have it in the middle here, but have it on top, I could hover over, select the clip and drag it down. And then example 1 is on top. So as soon as we start evaluating that, that shot is activated. But I don't need to do anything so tricky for the moment. So I'm going to drag example 1 down, and I'm going to edit the shot so that we start the scene with this ball swaying back and forth. So I'm going to need to zoom out to do that. So I'm going to left click in the timeline. I'm going to hold Control and scroll wheel out. And you can see that I'm zooming out of my timeline. So I would like, I'd say about 3 seconds of this ball swaying back and forth. So we can see up here in the middle that our sequence is currently set to 30 frames per second. So that means 30 frames pass for every second. So if I want 3 seconds, then I need to do 3 multiplied by 30. So 90 frames would be how long I want this clip to be. So I'm going to grab our example 1 and I'm going to move it to all the way to the left. I'm going to grab our shot 01 and I'm going to move it to the 90 frame mark. And then I'm going to hover over example 01 until my arrows point in both directions. Left click and trim this down just like we would an animation clip. And now it's the right length. And for simplicity's sake, let's just drag these onto the same track. So now what do we have? I'm going to left click over here, drag it out to frame 1, and click spacebar to play. So it plays the full 3 seconds, and then it starts to play the next shot. But when it gets to this red line right here, it restarts. So this red line is referred to as the end time, and it is what defines when the render should stop. Anything past that is considered outside of the bounds of what we're focused on. So what we want to do is we want to grab this red line and move it out to here. So now when we play, it'll play all the way through this shot and then into the next. And just like that, we're editing the sequence. I can very easily swap these shots around. So if I wanted to start with the man on the couch, I could grab example 01, drag it to the right, grab shot 1, drag it here, and drag that back in. And now I can play again, and I'm viewing a completely different edit. If I wanted to trim this down like we showed before, we could definitely do that. Close these gaps and put the end time back in. I could even jump into one of these shots and start modifying things. So let's go into shot 1. And let's say that I wanted the mannequin to be sitting more off center to the left, like here. I could make that change, go back out, and then watch again. And my changes are live in the edit. But you'll notice when it gets back to example 01, the mannequin is back in the center of the chair. Now, the audience won't be able to tell from this angle with the out of focus, but we know that. So let's have a look at how this actually plays out from a third person perspective outside our shot. So I'm going to hit this button to unlock the viewport from shots. And we're going to have a look at what happens when we have our playhead and we drag between these two shots. Just watch what happens to our mannequin. Do you see how he jumps around? So again, this is something we've covered previously with these transform tracks, where it's recording his location in space, his rotation. And if I was to scrub outside of these shots, he returns to the default as if sequence was closed because it's no longer evaluating any shots. Now, there's something important to note back in here. Let's come back into here. Let's lock our viewport to our camera cuts, and let's move our guy back into roughly the center of frame. I want to bring your attention to these red and green lines. Now, you might notice it's hard to tell on the left, but there's an extra green line here, and there's an extra red line here. And I can't click or move it. But when it gets to there, it still resets. So what is this? Well, this red line is actually indicating where the shot has been trimmed to in the edit above. It's just Sequence's way of letting us know that this is where the edit ends the shot. This can be very handy when you're animating a scene because it lets you know which areas you need to worry about. To check on the green side, let's go up, trim the shot again to 30, and then jump back in. And you'll see, even though we have our initial green start time over here, our other edit start time has moved inwards. And if we play, it's going to snap to that as our first frame. So I showed you before that you can zoom in and out of a sequence by holding Control and using the scroll wheel. But you can also use this little slider down the bottom. So if you grab on these little bits on either end, you can scale the preview range in that direction. If you grab the middle, you can slide it left and right to scroll along. But I prefer to grab onto some of this gray area with right click, and you get that little hand icon, and then you can slide it along like this by moving your mouse. So let's zoom in, scrub over here, and let's add another shot. So the first thing we're going to want to do is to grab this endpoint and extend it off. Now what I actually do when I'm working and creating a lot of shots at once is I zoom out, grab this playhead, and stretch it a long way off. The only downside to this is you're not going to be able to loop when playing until you bring that playhead back in. But I find it's handy to just keep it out of the way while I'm blocking out shots. So I'm going to come into here, holding Control and scrolling in. I'm going to put my playhead on frame 210. The frame after that shot ends. I'm going to click plus shot. And this time I'm actually going to hit insert shot up here. Sequencer is going to try and intelligently name the shot. It's seen I've called one shot example 01 right here. It's decided, okay, well maybe this is a good name, example 009. Now, I don't like that, so I'm going to use shot underscore 02. And then I'm going to hit save. And note that it's put in it in that same cinematic sequences folder we talked about before. And now we have a new shot. So if we dive in, we can see it's a blank sequence and it's ready to be populated. So in the next lesson, we're going to go through and create a new shot from scratch. Now, before we finish, let's make sure we save everything, because as you can see, if I dive into these shots, we've got this little star next to each shot in the sequence, as well as up here on the level. It just lets us know that things have changed in each of these assets, and if we don't save, we might lose that work. So let's hit File, Save All. In this lesson, we've learned how to create a master sequence, how to navigate and change shots through the breadcrumbs. But in the next few lessons, we're going to have a look at some various ways to add content to a new shot.